From world creation to sound design, I've been lucky enough to be able to bring you exclusive interviews from a variety of Ardem developers. We'll first start with co-founder and technical director Simon Suckut. Simon is a programmer at heart with a passion for delivering complex and scalable multiplayer systems, and when he's not developing Ardem, he loves spending time hiking through the woods with his dog. What has been the biggest technical headache so far? Definitely replicating the electrical system. It's so interconnected, you can have participants in the power grid that are on the other side of the map, which is a bit of a hassle to replicate. Are there things in Ardem you've had to scale back on just to make everything run properly? Yes, we're deliberately cautious with using physics in the game to make sure the server runs with as many players as technically possible. And is there a system or feature that you're really proud of pulling off? Absolutely. The base building system and the replication for it are close to ideal from a technical standpoint. Moving on, I spoke to Jonathan Engdahl, the lead world creator of Ardem. Jonathan has previously worked on the AAA title Exoborn and is dedicated to bringing Ardem to the best it can be. So how do you even start building a world like this? You start small. You start with a purpose and a clear vision ahead. This is a very complicated question as it depends on countless different factors. World creation is really the front line of all things and needs to be treated as such. Where do you pull your inspiration when you're building locations? We mostly try to get our creative minds together as one, to come up with some good, interesting variations that supports the game's pillars and core vision of the game. We often find inspiration and references out of games, movies and different combinations of design philosophies. Do you have a favourite area in Ardem that you can tell us about? The soon-to-be mountain complex. I can't wait to hear more about this mountain complex in the future, but let's move on. Next, I spoke to level designer Darian Zvelf. For the last 5 years, Darian has been working for Gamepires, the developers and publishers for the open world survival game Scum. So when you're designing an area, what do you do to ensure it's fun to play in? There's no right answer to this question, since player enjoyment is driven by millions of different factors and you can never be 100% sure that an area is fun to play. But the most important factor here is definitely playtesting. Every time I change something in an area I'm working on, I'm sure to test it. Even if it's a really small change, I really can't stress this enough. Playtest alone and with your teammates as often as possible when designing, and embrace the negative feedback as it's the most important resource you can get. Once you've collected enough feedback and stopped drowning in your own tears, implement these changes and address it. Playtests should drive iteration, not the other way around. How do you guide players without it feeling forced? There are 3 main ways to guide players: in-game visuals, narrative elements and UI. For level design, we mainly use the first 2, but predominantly the visual representation. Ardem thankfully really sticks to realism, and we're dedicated to player immersion both from visuals and gameplay perspective, so player guidance follows real-world logic. We're talking road signs, building placements, resources, etc., and it's all determined by how realistic it would be and how logical it would be in the real world. When you finally get to play Ardem, just follow logic and instinct while exploring and you'll be absolutely fine. An incredibly important part of any video game is always the user interface and user experience. And luckily I got to speak to Nikolas Klein, the UI and UX designer for Ardem and the first external hire outside of the core team. Nikolas has previously worked for Ubisoft on Rainbow Six Siege and Klein Games on the indie title Seed. He's also a self-proclaimed Monopoly master. So what makes UI feel good instead of annoying? There's a difference between good UI and good UX. Good UX should be almost invisible. Ideally the player can do exactly what they want, the way they assume to do it, with no hurdles in between. Good UI on the other hand is different. There are many principles you learn to follow, and many of them are true. Colours have to harmonise, visual hierarchy is important, and inconsistencies really stick out. For me, it's especially important to see if UI feels appropriate to its world, and if the thought and passion have been really put into it. How do you test if something really works for players? There are many different ways of testing, and honestly, they're all valid. Depending on the scope of a project, the size of the team, and the time you have, you can really go crazy. I've performed user tests with large groups of testers spanning multiple days, and I've handed my colleague a controller and asked them to do a simple task to see if my idea works. For Ardem, I usually go by instinct and experience from my prior projects, and in cases where I'm really not sure, I usually create a quick prototype to showcase my idea and see if it works. Is there any small detail you're really proud of? Not really a small detail per se, but I came onto this project as someone that does not really play many hardcore survival games, but brings a more casual view. What I quickly learned is that it's actually a strength, and it allows me to approach many systems established in other survival games and challenge them. Are these games doing it this way because it's the best way to do it, or are their creators just massive fans of the genre and too deep in the matter to consider other, maybe fresher ideas? This allows us to really come up with some hopefully genre-defining and interesting systems and ways to play our game. And the last person I'm speaking to in this video is Robin Legros, music and sound designer. Robin has an extensive sound design and composer portfolio and is dedicated to bringing the world of Ardem to life through audio. So how do you figure out what the game should sound like? I listened to how other games in similar styles sound. Having played a lot of zombie and survival games, I've developed a good sense of what the genre sounds like. I'm also drawn to that gritty, rusty aesthetic of survival games. The world is abandoned, so I really want to incorporate a worn and unclean quality into the sounds. It adds tension too, especially with the guns, vehicles and metallic sounds. In general, it may be cliché, but an old rusty door creaking never fails to create unease. The player will wonder, did another player hear me? Was it a zombie? Simply looting or exploring certain areas can therefore become a source of tension in themselves. Beyond that, I think what truly matters is building a game with a strong dynamic range. That is actually the biggest challenge, especially for a solo audio designer. In other words, it's about crafting a contrast between very quiet moments and much more intense ones. Think a player opening fire. Bullets may be scarce, forcing the player to think, I'm about to shoot, I can't afford to miss, and it might draw a crowd. Is this really worth it? A wide dynamic range powerfully emphasises the weight of the player's choices and creates meaningful contrast throughout their journey. Above all, I want to bring my personal touch to the game in order to establish our own identity, and ultimately that comes down to countless iterations on both assets and system designs. When do you choose silence over music? For the moment, we choose to go with music used very sparingly and diegetically, so that music lives in the game world. We're focusing more on realism. The environment needs to take centre stage and the player needs to listen to what's happening around them. I'm not ruling out the idea of extra diegetic music though, because adding music allows us to further develop our style and immerse the player in our game. I just don't want to add music for the sake of it, it has to serve a real purpose. Is there any sound or track you're especially proud of? I think the game's ambiences are going to be great. It's a lot of work, but I have fun designing them. The weather system is also very interesting to design and play with. Again though, I want the ambiences to be not too loud in specific situations. We need to create tension. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you like this video let me know and I might even do a part 2. Remember to like and subscribe and follow Ardem on Discord at discord.gg/Ardem.